All right, thanks for tuning in to more golf coverage on Prime Sports Network as we have a big one for you. The last major of 2022, the Open Championship, also known as the British Open. That's a story in itself. Jan Stephenson, Hall of Fame golfer, with us as always. How's it going, Jan?
Great.
And Jared Smola, of course, from Draft Sharks. You can see his nice little logo there. Right behind. See, Jared is actually live from the Open Championship. He goes to every golf event that we cover. And
so it's like, what, 3 a.m. there? So it'd be a little darker.
Yeah.
It would be. Yeah. So, and that's a good thing, the time difference. So we're going to be able to get up. I noticed that the coverage starts at 4 a.m. on USA Network on Thursday morning. I haven't seen the tee times yet. Have the tee times come out yet?
Yeah.
They're out.
All right, so we're going to have to, because that's obviously a huge deal for us.
Now you understand how important tee times and pairings are.
Yeah, unfortunately, one of my picks.
Sweat it all the time when we played. Who we got paired with and what times we got with the weather.
Yeah, one of my picks, unfortunately, got paired with Tiger.
Yeah, there's no way that Mark Collin can do anything now. And I think Schauffele's got no shot too. There's nothing worse than playing with Tiger Woods.
Well,
the galleries, all they care about is Tiger. The moment Tiger finishes, and Tiger will do something that I think is wrong. He'll finish the putt, he'll putt out. And so everybody will start moving to the next tee, knowing that it's interfering with the other players.
That's nice of him.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Let's see. Where the hell is he?
Tiger's paired with Fitzpatrick and Homa.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he was paired with Schauffele and and Markella.
No, so those two are paired with Rory.
Oh, that's a tough one too, though, because Rory's going to bomb it, and it's a local gallery, so it's kind of that's what I must have got it mixed up. So that's going to be a toughie too. But Max Homa is going to have trouble with Tiger.
Yeah,
he might.
So all right, so we're going to go over that, and obviously we're going to go over our picks. I also have some groupings, some groups that I'd like to have your expert opinion on, as far as which players that you would take. I've got Jared's top stats for the event, and including the top two that I picked out were the top two in windy conditions and par 4 scoring over the last 12 months. You also have 3-putt avoidance over the last 12 months and your overall model. So we'll get into that. St. Andrews, Jan. So tell us about St. Andrews. I'm sure you've played there plenty of times.
I have.
What compare St. Andrews to any other golf course you've ever played? Where does it rank?
There is no comparison to St. Andrews. And a lot of it is the history. I mean, it's the first time you play it, you're like kind of unimpressed because it's wide open and there's only about 4 or 5 greens that are single greens and it's, double greens and you're like, this is it. But then I remember playing the front 9 because we played a match. It was the top 2 money winners on the LPGA Tour played the top 2 PGA money winners on the European Tour. So that was Greg Norman and Bernard Langer, and it was Beth Daniel and myself. And we played a series around Britain. So, of course, we got to play St. Andrews. And the front 9, it was like pretty calm. We were doing okay. And then the wind came up and you turn and go, because it's a typical links where you go out on the 9, then you come back towards the clubhouse. And that wind and the rain started blowing and it was miserable. And in the practice round, I actually quit at the 17th hole, right at the hotel where we were staying at the old hotel. And the caddy was furious. He's like, you do not quit at St. Andrews.
Bobby Jones.
I'm going to because I'm cold and wet. And he was horrified. He said, I'm going to lose like 10 pounds. I bet on you. And I'm like, I don't want to finish.
Why? Were you in contention?
No, it was just a practice round.
Oh, but so he bet on you for the practice round?
At St. Andrews, and I had the top caddy, and I'm like, it's raining. He goes, it rains here every day. What are you talking about? But I quit, and I remember walking into the old hotel, and I had my old, the spikes, the old metal spikes, and I had my rain suit, and I walked in, and I ordered a pot of tea, hot tea. And they looked at me and they said, "You're making a puddle. Would you please dry off for your tee?" I was so wet.
How old were you at that time?
Probably 30.
Okay, so that was your first time there?
Yeah.
Wow.
But I've played there since. So.
Okay, but still, I mean, I obviously, well, again, even the men, they only play there every 5 years. So the ladies tour itself, how often do they play there?
They've played there only once, and it was a big deal to even allow. They actually had to change the rules because there weren't any lady members, and they had to actually, it's kind of like Augusta National, they had to add women members that weren't just wives so that they could have the women's open there.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, it would be nice to see that come around again, no question. But as far as the men are concerned, there's the talk about how if the weather doesn't play right, that meaning in a way it goes away and there is no weather, that the scoring could be really hot, could be really low, that you could get it into 1920. But for the most part, because the weather is gonna come into play a little bit, that I don't know. I think most people, Jared, believe we might get a winning score of around 16, maybe. What do you think? Is that what you're hearing?
If the weather comes into play, yes. I mean, as of now, if you look at the wind forecast, there's like nothing. Like, we're not even getting over 10-mile-per-hour winds on any of the days, and the weekend looks incredibly calm weather-wise. But we're still 48 hours out. I mean, it's probably going to change. So that's the thing to keep an eye on. Leading up to this is how that wind forecast is looking.
Okay, so then let's talk about the other thing, Jan, because they were saying, I guess the other point of view was, because it's been hot, that the greens are going to be harder, I guess.
Yeah, they're going to be firm underneath. Firm. I mean, the thing is, St. Andrews has always had pretty typically slow greens, and they don't have an irrigation system from tee to green, so the fairways can brown out pretty quickly and the ball can run a long way. So that part's going to be a key, because those little putt bunkers, they're strategically placed. Most of these guys can go over them now. But if you get in one, you can't reach the green. You're going to basically have to just hit out with a wedge. And so
it should be.
That's really important. And the other thing with Augusta greens is that they're always, I keep saying St. Andrews, is that they're slow. They've got a slow surface. And if it dries out, because they do have irrigation on the greens. The problem is if it dries out, they're going to have to add more moisture to keep the greens, because they're not used to this heat. So if that's the case, the greens are going to be slow. So it's going to be people that are pretty aggressive. It should be easy to putt. They have, big greens. There's some greens there that are 30,000 square feet. So
don't you think though, if they believe the wind is not going to be a factor, and right now the greens are fast, then they're not going to do anything to make it easier on the golfers around the greens. They're going to toughen that up as hard as possible. They're going to make the pin placements as hard as possible to counter the winds. Aren't they going to try that?
Absolutely. They're going to toughen up as much as they can. But the course can be pretty benign without weather, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wide open. There's only
so much you can do. Yeah.
There's only one hole in the whole golf course that has out of bounds, and that's on 17.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's supposedly one of the toughest holes, not just on the golf course, but in all of major golf.
It is. They've got to hit it over the old hotel.
Yeah, that's always fun.
So Janet, it's funny you kept mistakenly saying Augusta there, because I don't know if you've seen this. Now, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, Jan. There's a pretty close connection between players that have played well at Augusta and players that have played well at St. Andrews. 9 of the last 10 winners at St. Andrews have a top 3 finish at the Masters.
Oh, wow.
Do you see a connection between those two courses? I mean, they look completely different, but.
Absolutely, because both of those courses don't have rough. Augusta National has the pine needles and the trees, but you can avoid the heavy duty rough. And so that part of it, you can the big hitters are going to have a ball. And the same thing at Augusta. It's different there because it's so hilly that if you can carry those hills, you can get another 50 or 60 yards. Well, obviously they don't have that, but with the pot bunkers, it kind of is a similar thing as a hill. The big hitters are going to have a huge advantage.
Are you talking about that same year, Jared?
No, not that same year, but in their
Okay.
careers.
Okay.
9 of the last 10 winners have, finished top 3 at Augusta.
Okay. All right. So now I've already started to post your key stats for this week. So let's kind of start there. And taking a look, we've got the par 4 scoring. So why did you want to zero in on the par 4 scoring? Last 12 months,
Yeah.
and you've got the top players, really, the top
Right.
3 players, McIlroy, Rahm, and Thomas leading the way.
Yeah, I mean, par 4 scoring is always big. I think it's bigger at St. Andrews because it's a par 72, but there's only 2 par 3s and 2 par 5s. So
Wow.
we have 14 par 4s on this course.
That'll do it.
Yeah, so I think par 4 scoring is even more important than it normally is. Now you're right. I mean, it's most of the top players that are in this top 10 list. I think the ones that stand out: Seamus Power at 4,
Yes.
Shane Lowry at 5, Cam Young and Cam Smith actually 7, 8, and you have Sung Jae at 9. Other than that, it's the top 4 or 5 players in the world.
All right, and then also top 10 in 3-putt avoidance. So this is not on the ticker, but Xander Schauffele is. We're going to talk a lot about him in a minute, but he's the top 3-putt avoidance player over the last 12 months.
Yeah, massive greens here, as Jan was talking about. There's definitely been a correlation between guys who avoid 3 putts the best at St. Andrews and those who finish near the top of the leaderboard. So we're definitely looking for that. As you said, Greg, Xander 1, Taylor Gooch kind of surprisingly 2 there. Then you have a bunch of just good putters: Cameron Smith, Patrick Reed, Ty Hatton, Sam Burns, John Rahm. Wyndham Clark came in 8th here. That was surprising. Justin Thomas 9. Then Jason Kokrak, another surprise. He's been the 10th best at 3-putt avoidance.
And then the last key stat we have here is the windy conditions since 2019.
Yeah.
These are your top 10 players in windy conditions.
Yeah, so as of now, this stat does not matter. But if we get to Wednesday night and we see the wind pick up, forecasted, these are the guys you might want to look at. Tony Fenow, Shane Lowry, Patrick Cantley, Keegan Bradley in there at 4. You have JT popping up here again, Patrick Reed showing up here again, my boy Will Zalatoris showing up, and then Kokrak actually comes in 10th here too. So Kokrak shows up on 2 of these lists. That's interesting. I'm sure he has long odds.
Interesting.
I bet he'd be a nice long odd player then to look at.
Yeah.
Interesting that really, except for Lowry, there's not a lot of players, international players, on that list. That's interesting. Okay. Let's also, I tell you what, as we go through the picks here, I do have some trivia I want to throw your way, because we're going to go into a whole lot of trends and all sorts of key stuff that's going to help you handicap this event. So before we do that, here's a couple of trivia questions. Okay, first, who was the last player to win the British Open on his first appearance?
Colin Morikawa.
It was a trick question, basically. You got it, Jared. I wanted to see if you were thinking smart. There you go.
Yep.
Who was the last player to win the British Open without ever making a cut in any of his prior appearances?
Oh, geez. John Daly? Who?
No, that sounds like a good answer, though.
Zach Johnson.
No. Louis Oosthuizen did it.
Oh, I was going to say he's the one I thought you'd put for who was the only win that's never won on the PGA Tour would be Louis.
That would be a good one. So he did it where? St. Andrews in 2010. He had missed 3 cuts in his first 3 British Open appearances.
And then ran away with it.
That's right. And that's because, as we mentioned last week, the windy conditions, the weather was just amazingly difficult for a group of players depending on their tee times. And Louis Oosthuizen took major advantage of that. And then finally, international players. This is not a trivia question, but this is just a key trend I want to start off with. International players have not won, believe it or not, consecutive majors since Danny Willett's Masters in 2016, which followed Jason Day's win in the 2015 PGA. That's a span of 26 majors.
Wow.
So that's a long time since international players won back-to-back majors. So
maybe this year maybe this time they'll win. An international player will win.
Maybe, because we start with the favorite, Rory Mcilroy, and McIlroy's sitting there at 9-1 as the favorite. You could probably get him at 10-1 at sportsbooks. I think that's pretty much where he's hovering. But McIlroy 9-1. And then you also have Schauffele at 12-1. So we'll start with those two guys because last week we talked about how, remember we previewed early on the Open and said which players should we take now, and then so Schauffele was a player that we talked about, and he was 20-1 at the time. And then I mentioned to Jared, I think it was maybe Friday or Saturday, after Schauffele got back into contention. That I had to jump on him, and I did. So I doubled down on him, and I did not think he was going to get all the way down to 12-1, Jared. I mean, that's crazy. The second choice.
I think it's crazy. I mean, I guess everything's kind of coming together for him. He's obviously playing very well. He's had a lot of success at the Open. But man, to see him ahead of Rahm and JT and Scheffler is just crazy to me. I mean, Xander does come in second in my model that I put together this week. So I mean,
wow.
Maybe it's not crazy, but I cannot bet Xander Schauffele at 12-1.
I wouldn't bet him, especially when you look at his teeth. Didn't we say that his pairing was a tough one? He's playing with Rory, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Well, what's really the deal is like we just said, if you're able to grab him with good odds, fine. But now at 12-1, unless you've taken him the last few weeks and you're on this run with him, then just keep going. But if you haven't taken him the last couple of weeks and now you want to take him at 12-1, that's probably not the way to go.
How many people have won 3 in a row on the PGA Tour?
Very tough. And throw in a Pro-Am in there too.
Yeah.
That's very tough. I'm not sure. It's been a while. No question.
Yeah, you kind of feel like your luck's running out. You've had to win a tournament. You have to have it all. You have to play well, make your putts, and have luck. He's had it 2 in a row. It's not like he's a dominating figure like a Tiger or someone back Jack Nicklaus or Hogan where they could do that. But it's not like he does anything that fantastically well that he's going to be that much ahead of everybody else. And his luck's got to be running out by now.
You would think so. Confidence can only go so far. There's no doubt he has never been more confident in his life. But let's keep in mind, he hasn't won a major yet. So
yeah, but he's also had 2 weak fields he's won against too.
McIlroy. Now, Rory being the favorite, he hasn't won a major since 2014. He's been phenomenal this year without winning a major. The 3 majors, 2nd, 8th, and 5th. He played here in 2010. He finished 3rd. If you look at things the way they're going overall, what does he have? 5 top 5s in 12 appearances at the British Open with a runner-up and a win. Again, the win was 14. I think that became the British Open, then the PGA, because I think Rory might even be one of the last guys to have one of those stretches. Remember that 2014 stretch? Didn't he win like 3 or 4 in a row, and 2 of them were majors? So he had an incredible year that year. But since then, Rory hasn't won a major. So what about Rory this week? What's your gut tell you about the pressure that he's going to be on? Everybody in Europe, they're going to be just all rooting for him. But he's the favorite and he hasn't won in so long. So what about that, Jan? What do you feel? What's your gut tell you about Rory this week?
My gut tells me that he's going to be close because it's his home territory. Obviously, the pressure, like you said, of being home, it can go both ways. It can really pump you up and you get I've won at the Australian Open but on the first one I went down there for, everybody was expecting it and it was so much pressure. And then the second one I went down for, I kind of embraced everybody being behind me and it was momentum, and I wanted to play off against Pat Bradley. So it was the momentum of everybody being on my side actually helped. And I won Canada with everybody behind me because I was a Commonwealth, from Australia. So there's good and there's bad. Rory wants it because what you just said is that he hasn't won a major in so long and he wants it desperately. And because of that pressure is probably more than the local being a local favorite. The only thing different is I thought he would do better when the Open was in Ireland and he missed the cut and he played horrendously, but he came in not playing well. this time he's coming in really, really good form. So I expect him to be in the top 5. I just don't know. It depends on what kind of start he gets off to.
By the way, if you take the weather out of the equation, and just talk about being in a major at this particular course in an Open Championship, playing early on a Thursday compared to being in the afternoon times, is there a difference without the weather?
No.
Okay.
In fact, the only difference is that if the scores, it works in an opposite way. If you've got an afternoon tee time and the scores are really low in the morning, and you're like, God, how am I ever going to catch that? So now you've got that. Whereas if you get off in the morning, but the pressure is that you better get off to a good start, because the next day you've got an afternoon tee time and it's hard to make up that ground. I actually used to like late early. And these guys are also fit because, it's like playing 36 holes, because you don't get to have a break. You don't get to practice and fix whatever mistakes happened in that afternoon, because you have to turn around and get ready for an early tee time the next day. And with the way the tee times are with the American TV, they're playing early. So, and that's hard to get up when you're on American time. So people that have been over there for 2 weeks, I'm sure that's why they did it. This is one where weather doesn't have much effect. It's just a personal thing of, do you like getting out there and posting a score? Do you want to wait and tee off in the afternoon and see what the scores are and know that whatever happens on the first day, you can make it up the next morning. So that's a personal thing with players.
Okay. All right, now let's move on to, you got Scheffler at 14-1. And then we also have Justin Thomas, Jon Rahm, and Jordan Spieth at 16-1. And now we start to get to our picks. Scheffler at 14-1. He is going to be my top choice. This is really tough for me because I've picked Rory. I went on the run with Rory and Fitzpatrick. But I just, when it was all, and then Schauffele, he's so hot. But like I said, I already took him with better odds. So it came down to, you know what? Let me just stick with kind of what works. And Scheffler started the whole Masters thing. He got off to a great start. He almost won the U.S. Open as well. He's going to look to become the first player since Tiger Woods in 2005 to win both the Masters and the Open Championship in the same year. Keep in mind that back in 2005, Tiger was able to accomplish that at St. Andrews. Scheffler has only made one appearance. He was 8th in the Open Championship last year. So what about Scheffler, Jared? You stayed away from him. What do you think about his chances?
I think he has a great chance. I just like the guy picked for a couple points higher, a bit better. But, Scheffler 4th in my model, does everything well that I looked for this week. He has the creativity I think you need around here. I think he's really good with the short game, with his wedges, playing different types of shots that I think you need at St. Andrews and most of these, Open Championship courses. Scheffler, 8th place in his first Open appearance, his only Open appearance last season. So he's already showed he can play well on this type of golf course.
And then Jon Rahm, Jan, is 16-1, and Rahm, the 21 U.S. Open champ, in the 3 majors this year, 27th, 48th, and 12th. So that's not all that great. In Open Championships, he does have one top 10. That was a 3rd place finish. I believe that might have been last year. But Rahm, as we said this before, Jan, he's just not having a great year. He had one good week win at the Mexico, and that's about it. He really did not play well at all in the final round at the U.S. Open when he had a great chance to win.
He did. He really kind of screwed it up a few times. I don't know what's wrong with him, because I love his golf swing, and he certainly is, being a European player. I'm sure they played a lot of matches at St. Andrews. So he knows the course really well. And he's a great wind player, not that there's going to be much wind. And he bombs it. I mean, I love his golf swing. And he's a good putter. I mean, so I like him better than Scheffler, because I think he's got the more well-rounded game consistency. I think he liked being number 1 player, whereas I think Scotty kind of likes to be in the background more. He's more of a quiet. So I know that he's ready to prove himself, but like you said, he's not playing well. And a lot of this stuff comes down to being on the momentum of playing well and feeling comfortable with your game. So he's got something to prove for sure.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Jared.
He really hasn't been good around the green this season. I think to me, that's an important stat at St. Andrews. I think you're going to have to scramble well.
Yeah. Big time.
And also, like you mentioned, normally he would be a good play in the Open Championship because he's got the Irish Open wins and he's won a lot overseas, more than most other top players. So he's kind of more comfortable. But besides McIlroy, of course, but it's just not working out for him so far this year. So we both stayed away from him. Okay, then we have Jordan Spieth and Thomas are both 16-1 as well. And here are two of our picks. Jared, Justin Thomas is your top pick, and Jordan Spieth is my second pick. So let's start first of all with why you took Justin Thomas to win a second major this year. He's trying to duplicate what Rory McIlroy did back in 2014, win the PGA and the Open Championship in the same year. Justin Thomas has never had a top 10 in an Open Championship, but you like him this week.
And he missed the shot last week too.
He did, yeah. I'm not too worried about that. I love Thomas's fit at this course. I think his weakness is he can get inaccurate off the tee. I think that's we talked about with the Augusta connection. That's not necessarily going to kill you here unless you get a bad break and end up in a bunker. I think Thomas, an awesome wedge player. There's going to be a lot of wedges, a lot of short iron shots at St. Andrews. So you look at over the last year, Justin Thomas, the best player in this field from 125 to 150 yards. He's the 8th best player from 100 to 125, and he's the best player from 75 to 100 yards. He popped in a lot of those stats we looked at: 3rd best in par 4 scoring, 9th best in 3-putt avoidance. I like Thomas more if it gets windy. He's a great wind player. We saw him at the Players have that awesome round when it was super windy. So yeah, the only thing he's missing is like a high-end finish at the Open, but I think it's coming. I think St. Andrews is a great fit for him. And by the way, you can get Justin Thomas at 22-1 right now on MGM. He's 21-1 on FanDuel. So there are some numbers you can get him into 20s, which I just think is crazy. Yeah. I'm not sure why.
I agree with that. It's because I don't know if you saw his interview on TV about when he played the practice round. He said it was the most productive miscut that he's ever had, because usually you'd go home for a couple of days and then come back to the tournament. And he said, but because he was over there, he played 2 extra practice rounds, and he said it was so productive because Bones, his caddy, was helping him on different kinds of chip shots, and he is, other than Jordan, he's the best wedge player I've ever seen.
All right, speaking of Jordan, again, he's my second choice. He has 4 top 10s, 3 top 5s, a runner-up, which was last year, and of course the win at the 2017 Open. So he's got a nice resume at Open Championships. Hasn't played well in the majors this year, but overall, he's got the win this year, which helps his confidence a little bit. And last week was a nice kind of week, in my opinion, to kind of get his juices flowing for this week's event. I just think he plays really well. It might be, and you guys talk about the difference with the Masters and the Open Championships. I mean, the similarities, and I think Jordan's one of those guys that fits really well at both of those venues. Yeah. And I can see him having a really good week this week. So I went ahead and I said, you know what? It's kind of like Rory. He hasn't won a major in a while. And the fact that he's got a win, I kind of took him too over Rory and Xander also because I'm getting a little bit better odds, Jared.
Yeah, I like Spieth. Playing well, has the Masters connection we talked about, definitely has the short game that he's going to need here. The only stat that I looked at that he struggles in, 3-putt avoidance. He's 108th in this field in 3-putt avoidance over the last year. He tends to miss a lot of those 5, 6, 7 footers.
Yeah, he misses those short. Have some of that. That's when you don't expect, when you think he hits this amazing chip shot, and then he's got a 4 or 5 footer, and then he misses it, and you're like, what?
Yep.
That's the only bad thing I can say about him.
That's like Spieth and McIlroy. That's why I was like, you have those guys, and at some point they might really kill you with an easy miss putt. Because Rory, we saw it last at the U.S. Open. He was doing so well with the putter, and then all of a sudden, it was like night and day from one round to the next, and you just never know when either of those guys, especially Spieth, it's going to have it's going to drive you crazy with misses.
The only difference is that the greens at Augusta don't have a lot of potato chip. There's not a lot of undulation. They're pretty easy to read.
All right. Also, in this general area, we are going to bring up the U.S. Open champ, Matthew Fitzpatrick. In my opinion, his odds should be about 30-1. And I say that because of the difficulty of winning back-to-back majors. It's just almost incredibly hard, as we all know, Jan.
What are his odds?
18-1. So it's like it should be on a normal event, but I just think when you have to calculate the fact that he's got to win back-to-back majors, I just think his odds should be higher because it's just so hard. It doesn't get done. So, and then look, he played pretty well last week. We don't know how that pressure is going to fall upon him this week or not. I think he's going to play well. I think he'll be a top 20, maybe a top 10. I just can't imagine him winning back-to-back, Jan.
No, I agree with you totally. I think it's just so much pressure that the fact that he's had to do all these interviews since the U.S. Open, there's a lot of pressure, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you have no idea how many interviews you have to do when you're back home in England, and he's been obviously on the American tour. So he's had all of that to deal with. He's probably doing talk shows while he's there. So it's all going to be focused on that. So then when you go to play, there's a lot of pressure for you to play well. They're going to say, how do you think you're going to do? We hope you win the Open. And they're all going to talk about that for the week. So it is a lot of pressure.
By the way, Jared, Fitzpatrick, no top 10s in 6 British Opens. His best finish in a British Open is 20th.
He doesn't really excel in any of the stats I looked at this week. I do think he's a better player even over the last 6 months than he has been, longer term.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm with you. The number's just not high enough for me to bet him.
Okay.
That's a good point. I think he's really made a huge improvement since he committed to the U.S. Tour, the PGA Tour. I watched him play at the Valspar in Tampa when he was here. And even since then, the improvement in his game, and right from January, but then when I watched him in March, I watched his golf swing get better and better and get more comfortable because it's totally different playing American golf. So now he's got to go back to playing European golf. So.
All right, now let's talk about another pick, one of our picks, and that's the next player up. Matter of fact, we'll go with the next 2 players up. The second and third picks for Jared are Cameron Smith and, of course, Will Zalatoris. But let's start with Cameron Smith. This one I was a little bit more surprised. No top 10s in 4 British Opens, sort of like Fitzpatrick. His best finish, like Fitzpatrick, 20th. But this year, his majors have kind of his correlation to his play. He was 3rd at the Masters, then 13th at the PGA, and a miscut at the U.S. Open. So we know his game is not as good as it was earlier this year, but you like him enough in a crowded field of top players to take him as one of your top picks.
Yeah, 28-1 seems like a good number to me on Cam Smith. And yeah, I agree. He's not in top form, not where he was a few months ago. He was coming off a 10th place at the Scottish Open last week, though, and really he played well enough for 3 rounds to win that thing. He shot 68 in round 1, and he shot a 75 in round 2, but then on the weekend he went 68, 67. So I like that he kind of got rounded back into form coming into this one. Obviously has the short game, I think, that you need at St. Andrews. 7th in around the green over the past 12 months, 3rd in 3-putt avoidance. And you talk about the Masters connection. Cam Smith definitely has that working in his favor. His last 5 appearances at Augusta: 5th, 51st, 2nd, 10th, and 3rd. And then, Jan, I'd like your thoughts here, but I read that I've never played St. Andrews, but I read that the miss here is left. Most of the trouble is right.
That's
Cam Smith.
That is so right.
Yeah,
That's
Cam Smith
exactly what I was going to say. And
Yep.
Cam Smith is a little bit shot, and he hits the ball right to left. And when he gets away on him, look at the Players Championship on 16. I mean, he got lucky to make a birdie there or make a par coming down the stretch because he sniped it there. And then he was so scared of hitting it in the water on 18, he just shoved it to the right. So St. Andrews is a course that favors right to left for sure.
Next up, Will Zalatoris. And at 30, he's sitting there now. What is he, still 30-1?
30-1.
30-1. Let's keep in mind, he's never played a full round at the Open Championship. He withdrew last year on his only appearance. He has been fantastic in majors, 6th with 2 runner-ups. He's got 3 runner-ups in majors. I have to ask you, though, we talked about this last week with taking him early and so forth, and it didn't seem to matter because we said, well, the only way he would go backwards is if he missed the cut, and he missed the cut. So I do have to ask you how differently you feel today as opposed to last week.
Not too differently. I mean, we've seen. I mean, Zalatoris, didn't he? He missed a cut or two before he had the strong major showings this year. He went, he missed cut at the Byron Nelson, then he finished second at the PGA. He did finish 5th in the Memorial before his second place at the U.S. Open. So I like him on these major type courses. I think 30 to 1's a fair number considering how good he's been. And the other thing I like about Zalatoris, we always make fun of his putting, which I guess is fair, but he's if you look at his numbers, he's getting better at 3-putt avoidance. So over the last year, he's 31st in 3-putt avoidance, which isn't bad. Over the last 3 months, he's 15th best in this field at 3-putt avoidance. So I actually think he is a pretty good lag putter. And I think it's, those 8-12 footers that he tends to struggle with, but he's been pretty good lately, at least. Lagging those putts up to a few feet and then actually making them.
I agree. And then the greens aren't going to be treacherous as far as speed because he gets very nervous over those little 2-footers that normally, not that big a deal when he takes it back inside and shut and then he has to try to open it and doesn't have enough time. But I've heard that he's been spending ridiculous amount of hours practicing his putting. I heard from another coach that's all they're doing is everyone's been giving him tips and he's done all kinds of drills. I just wish he'd change his stroke, but he's actually practiced, and you can see, like you said, it's improved because of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Jordan. These greens aren't as tough with the 4 and 5 footers as they can be when the greens get 12 and 13 in a U.S. Open.
Look, at 30 to 1, he's a total play. Just like Schauffele, I took him last week. So you don't want your player coming in with a miscut, but he's at the point right now that he's just until he disproves his major run, and misses a cut at a major or is never in contention. You got to take him, especially at 30 to 1. You just cannot.
Especially me.
Especially
me. I am pot committed. I could not stand myself if I had to watch him win a major and I wasn't
you're taking him
exactly
the rest of his career.
After you've taken him every single time.
Yeah.
Now, a player you did not take, even though he played well last week, and he's kind of your boy, I took, and that's Max Homa. So when I saw you didn't take him, I was like, all right, fine, I'll go ahead and grab him. Homa, why not? You take a look at how he's played, and he's having just a tremendous year, 16 months or so. Now he does not have exceptional major experience at all. He's never had a top 10 in majors with 7 missed cuts. He was 40th last year in his only appearance at the Open Championship. He has 1 top 15 in a major. That was the PGA Championship this year. But let's keep in mind he has at least made all 3 cuts in the majors this year. And it really just put me over the top last week, Jared, with his performance. That was the one thing we also didn't know is, his links golf experience and how would that come into play. So the way he played, I was pretty confident. The only thing is his odds are definitely different than what they were. So even though I took him last week at 80 to 1,
right.
I just felt I still have to put him in my picks at 40 to 1. That's the difference though, is getting 40 to 1 instead of 80 to 1.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you highlighted him here. I think 40 to 1's a fair number. Like you said, though, we talked about him on the show last week at 80. I think that was obviously when to get him, but I have no issues with him at 40. He's been one of the 15 best, maybe one of the 10 best players in the world for the past 6 months now. And so 40 to 1 for a guy playing that well, even though he doesn't have the experience or success you'd like to see at Open Championships. I still think Homa's a good bet. And he's a guy, he's just a proven winner. Like if he's in the mix come Sunday, I think Homa has what it takes to get it done.
Well, the problem is he's got to get by the first 2 days with that pairing.
That's it.
That's he's a Tiger, right?
Yeah. Yep. That's the thing that does concern me.
Tiger pairing is everybody dreads it.
Yep. So, but what about Max Homa's game, Jan? What do you think about, he's a top 20 ranked player now. So what do you think about his overall talent and his ability to be even better, to be a major champion?
Well, and that's the thing when you said to be better. I mean, that's one thing I'll say about Max, that he reminds me of what I thought would happen with Ricky Fowler, that he would, bounce off, having a young personality that's fun. His tweets are great. He's always doing fun stuff on there. You watch him, sometimes like during COVID, he would show what he was practicing and what he was doing. And I loved watching him work on his golf swing during COVID. And he actually, when he played last week, even when he was playing at the Scottish Open, he went and played another golf course. He played Ballybunion because he'd never played it, and that's why you're just playing another tournament. So he's really soaking it in, being in the top 10. So I'm happy to see that because he deserves it. And I love his attitude. He's fun, and yet he's got a really good golf game. I love his golf swing, like that he's trying to improve. And just by playing that much, and he's getting recognition, he's won a tournament. I love it. So I'm really happy to see he's doing well.
Okay, now two more of our picks. Both players are at 35-1. Let's start with a player that you mentioned last week, Jared, and that is Tony Fenow. So Tony Fenow, if you take a look at his Open Championship resume, he's got 5 top 30s in 5 British Opens, including 1 top 5. He has, not played particularly well this year in the majors. That's kind of what scared me away, because he's usually a very good major player, but he hasn't shown that yet this year. Matter of fact, he hasn't had a top 10 in his last 5 majors, but you like Fenow. Why do you like him this week?
Yeah, well, he wasn't playing well when the Masters and the PGA happened. And then, he had been playing well for the past month or two. And, the miscut at the U.S. Open was disappointing. But, we talk about the Masters connection. Fenow has that. The Open history, Open Championship history, he has that. He came in third in my model. It was Justin Thomas 1, Xander Schauffele 2, Tony Fenow 3. He kind of does everything well that I want to see players do well at this course. He's 14th in approach over the last 2 years. He's 25th in around the green. And this is the surprising one, because we think about Fenow as a bad putter, but over the last 2 years, Fenow 11th best in 3-putt avoidance.
Wow.
He has been good on those longer putts and just lagging them up and banging them in 2. So I just think it's a good fit. I honestly don't love the 35. He was 50 when we talked about him last week. There are still some 40s and 45s out there if you shop around. He's just a guy I want to be on because, again, I just think he fits the course well and has done well in Open Championships before.
Yeah, and he's a good wind player. Not that there's going to be that much wind. And the thing is that his iron play is so good. I mean, he's one of my favorite golf swings. But the difference is that we always criticize because he's not a great 15-foot, 20-foot putter, and yet it seems that's one of the reasons he avoids 3-putting, because he hits a lot of good shots. And a lot of players like a Justin Thomas or a Jordan would have drained half the putts that he misses. I mean, I watched him play like 3 times this year when I walked with him at the Players, and I feel like he missed so many putts, but he wasn't even upset about it. They were 15 feet, and he looked like he wasn't even expecting to make them.
Yeah, Fenow, 3 top 15s in his last 4 events, including a runner-up in Canada. 13th last time out at the Travelers. Okay, and then the other player, 35-1, and we've talked about this player before, and I don't know, I'm probably going to regret this, but Tommy Fleetwood, I'm going to get suckered into taking him again this week. He was runner-up in this event in 2019. He actually has had a decent resume in his last 4 years overall in Open Championship plays. He was also 5th at the PGA Championship, 14th at the Masters. Did not make the cut in 2015 at this particular golf course, but I did like the way that he played last week at the Scottish Open. And so when we're talking about those, international players that are not the favorites, but that next group of guys, I kind of like him over Tyrrell Hatton and some of those other guys. So if there's a guy I think that could maybe do something in that grouping, then maybe last week we'll get him going, Jared.
I would love to see Tommy win. I might have been tempted if he was 50-1.
Yeah,
but
I know.
at
35-1, it's not good. I don't like it either. Yeah.
I'd like to see him win. It'd be
right
fun.
to left, though.
There you go.
Okay.
And he hits that crooked big hook because he comes from so much open and rolls his wrists and gets it shot. So That helped. What happened to Sam Burns? Nobody bet Sam Burns this week?
No, not this
That's a little
week.
scary.
No.
He hits it right to left. What was his odds?
He's 45.
It's a good number.
But next up at 50 to 1, right next to Burns, is Matsuyama. And that is Jared's fourth choice. So Hideki, I was thinking about him too, specifically just the odds. That was it.
Yep.
I was like, Hideki Matsuyama at 50 to 1. What's up with that? So, yeah, I think you have to put a couple of bucks on Matsuyama. But when you look further in, overall, let's see, he's got 1 top 10 and 7 Open Championships. So that's not all that great. He's missed 3 of his last 4 cuts in Open Championships. So that's not great. But he is coming off of 4th place at the U.S. Open, and he's 50 to 1, Jared.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing I'm going to do. I think that number's at least 10 points too big. Yeah, he only has the 1 top 10 at the Open, but he has a 39th and 18th and a 14th as well. The 18th was actually at St. Andrews back in 2015, so I like that he's played here before in tournament conditions. Obviously has the Masters connection, won in 2021. He's actually Hideki's finished top 20 at Augusta in 7 of his last 8 appearances now, so he has that going for him. Has the approach game you need, has the around the green game you need. He's 12th in this field in strokes gained around the green over the last 2 years. But yeah, more than anything else, as you said, Greg, it's just 50 to 1, just too big of a number, I think.
Okay, now we're going to talk about my 2 alternates. Jan, I want your input on these 2 elder statesmen. And once we started getting into this category, I was like, if I'm going to, because this Open Championship seems to be, when you look at all the trends, it seems to be, it's going to be won by a top player. But every once in a while, an Open Championship, similar to a Masters, can be won by a veteran, an older guy. Where did that come from? And so I just decided that if I was going to use my alternates, I'm going to use them on those types of players. So the 2 guys that stood out for me were both at 65 to 1, Justin Rose and Adam Scott. So they both have major wins. Of course, and that's the thing too, is they both just have 1 major win. So they want to get a second. They're both early in their 40s. They're both 41 actually. So their career is not over. They can win. They can win an event like this. So what do you think about Rose and Scott, Jan? If you had to choose between the 2, who would you go with?
Well, I'm going to go with the Aussie. That's automatic. So
that's true.
Yeah, and I tell you what I like Adam is he spends a lot of time in England. That was his legal residence when he left Australia until he moved to the Bahamas. So he does spend a lot of time in England, and he's very comfortable there. So in Britain, so I would think that he would be my favorite.
Whose alarm clock is that? Oh, that's Jan. Okay, I should have figured that since nothing was being done and Jared wasn't on the call. So
not me. Not me.
All right. So, what did you think about if you had to take one of those 2, Jared? Who would you go with?
Sorry, Jan. I think I'm going to go with Rose though here, just because he's kind of popped a few times recently. 4th at the Canadian Open, 13th at the PGA Championship, came 37th at the U.S. Open. So he had been bad for a while there leading up into that stretch, but it seems like he's rounding back into form a bit. And he is the type of crafty veteran that maybe could surprise at an Open Championship.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's got this sentimental value of being home and I mean, when he was 16, remember when he broke through at Muirfield. Yeah. So this is I mean, he probably was. I mean, really, it's more as an emotional bet with me.
All right.
Okay, before we get into the long shots, now I want to go over these pairings because they're going to include players we haven't talked about yet and players we have. So your choice. And I made sure, Jared, that none of these were players that you already picked, obviously. So if you had a choice, Jared, between McIlroy, Scheffler, or Rahm?
Rory.
Jan?
Rory.
Okay. If you had a choice between Jared, Schauffele, Spieth, and Fitzpatrick?
Spieth.
Spieth.
Oh, wow. Okay. Jared, Lowry, Morikawa, Dustin Johnson.
That's an
And
interesting
talk
one. I mean,
about these players because we haven't talked about them yet.
Yeah, I do think DJ, and it's a live tour stuff, so it's tough to tell exactly how much weight's put in it, but it does seem like he's kind of been better his last couple appearances there. Morikawa's a guy I love, but his game's just not right now. So I would go Lowry among those three.
Oh, I will go Johnson because I'm actually rooting for all of the live play. I think the live players I bet their odds are high. I'm going with Dustin. I'm going with Brooks. I'm going with Patrick Reed. I'm going with Taylor Gooch. I think they've got something to prove. I think they have a little extra that they're going to want to go out there and show people.
Well, Jared.
And I don't know what their odds are, but I think their odds are pretty high, aren't they?
Well, Jared has Patrick Reed as his top alternate at 100-1.
Wow.
So why did you go with with Patrick Reed, Jared?
Yeah, I think his game's trending. I mean, we talked about it before he moved to Live Tour. His last few events, that his game was kind of rounding into form. The numbers, the strokes gained off the tee and approach were better. Then he came in third at that Portland event. I watched a lot of that last round, and he was awesome.
Yeah.
So I like that. He obviously has the short game for St. Andrews. Has the Masters history with the win there. Has good Open Championship history. 20th at St. Andrews back in 2015. Then his last 4 appearances here: 12th, miscut, 28th, and 10th.
Wow. No, he's got great imagination. I think he's the type that could, he's that type with the attitude. Well, I'm just going to show you.
Okay, here's another grouping. Jared, who would you take? And if it's too easy because of one player, then I'll ask you for a second one. But this is a 4 pairing: Homa, Burns, Fleetwood, Cantlay.
Oh man, I gotta go Cantlay there. Just long term, I think he's the best player. I think he's the best player of those 4. Yeah, gotta go Patrick Cantlay.
Odds wise,
well, you know what? We haven't
sure.
talked about Cantlay either, Greg.
No. So what do you? I mean,
and he's a sleeper. I think he's getting ready to break through.
I mean, he's had some bad
on that one.
Cantlay's had some bad rounds and like bad shots, but his last 4 appearances now: 3rd at Memorial, 14th U.S. Open, 13th Travelers, 4th Genesis Scottish Open. I mean, he's playing well overall.
Look, we know it's not about how good he is, and the question is, and look, last week he gets into contention. Soon as he gets into contention, he disappears. He got into contention twice, I think. Both times he disappeared.
The guy has won 5 tournaments. I mean, one tour championship doesn't really count, but
he could be just like Xander Schauffele. Soon as he wins the next time out, he can win 2, 3, and 4. That kind of. That's how good he is. But there's something wrong up here. And he's never won a major. So, but you know what? I don't know if this is one of those events, though, Jan. One of those Open Championships where you could potentially post a score early and win, because it's not a very tough Open Championship. So I'm not so sure that's the way. I think you're going to have to be in front, don't you think, to win this week?
Well, that's the thing, is that there's somebody could come from behind and take the people that are leading. Like when it's a tough golf course, it's hard to catch. You've got it because it's easy to lead when it's really hard because you can play a little safer. But when you're trying to catch somebody and the golf course is hard and the conditions are bad, it's really hard to make birdies because you've got to be careful. If you get too aggressive, it comes up and bites you. So somebody could come from behind on Sunday if the conditions are decent.
And that might be the way Patrick Cantlay is going to have to win. He might.
I agree. There's certain players that's the way it's going to be. I think Fenow is one of them. I think he's better when he's not very good when he leads. And Patrick, lately, I mean, when you think about some of the tournaments that he's won, he shouldn't have won the Memorial last year. Because they made John Rahm pull out because he had COVID and he had a 6-shot lead. So he kind of coasted in because John Rahm was gone. So there's some wins he's had, and then he blew it and let Scheffler win in Arizona.
Yeah, that was the beginning. That was the beginning of his season of just not being able to close the deal.
Yeah,
And then it happened again at the RBC Heritage with Spieth.
I agree.
Okay, so then who did you pick, Jan, out of that four?
Well, I was going to go with Cantlay, but what are they again?
Cantlay, Fleetwood, Burns, and Homa.
Well, you know, I'm a Burns fan.
Yeah, Burns is.
I'm like Burns, like Jared is with Zalatoris.
Yeah, Burns has got to get over the hump. He has his best finish in a major was this year when he finished 20th at the PGA. He was 76th last year at the Open Championship. And really that's it with Sam Burns is he has to play. And, you know, I would have considered him this week, but 66th last week, that's not a good sign.
No, but you know what? He's, you know, the fact that he went over there and time change and he'd never, you know, they've done their sightseeing with him and his wife. So now it's ready to play golf.
All right.
He also played well at the, he played well at that McManus Pro-Am.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. 45-1 for a guy who's won as much as he has lately seems like a good bet. Yeah.
All right. How about this grouping? Oosthuizen, Tiger, and Brooks Koepka. Jared?
Well, I don't like any of those guys. I guess I would go Oosthuizen just for his history at St. Andrews. I mean, he has a first and I think he has a second too, doesn't he?
He has a playoff loss.
Yep.
I'm going Brooks.
Brooks has got to get his game going.
I think he's going to. This is a golf course where he can hit it all over the place.
Yeah.
And you know, and he's got a good short game, and he's got something to prove.
Brooks, let's see. This year in the majors, he's got a miscut and 255ths.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Okay, now the long shots, and that includes our picks. My fifth pick is, yes, I'm going to go ahead and do it. And that's Thomas Peters at 130 to 1. The golf course should fit him well because it's Bomber's type of advantage. He's got that game. You know, his best finishes have been in the Masters. So I'm going to give it a chance. He's got to get off to a good start, though. And he's 130 to 1. And then also at 130 to 1 is your second alternate, Jared, and that is Mr. Scottish McIntyre. So what do you what was your reasoning about going to McIntyre? Was it those two previous Open Championship results?
Basically, and the fact that he's come 12th and 23rd at the Masters. So if we're buying into that Augusta connection, plus, I mean, McIntyre, he's not coming in the best of form. You know, he missed the cut last week at the Scottish Open and hadn't been playing that well on the Euro Tour the past few weeks. But just long term, I think he's a better talent than 130 to 1. And so I'm just sort of hoping he, gets his mojo back at an event that he's done well at.
All right, so those are the two that rounds up our picks. Meanwhile, throw in any other of the. Well, I tell you what. Before that, I want to let's go over the elder statesman groupings. How about this? If you had to choose between Sergio Garcia, Ian Poulter, Lee Westwood, and Francesco Molinari, Jared.
Pulling up Molinari's recent stats here to see what he's been up to. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Sergio. I think he's just the best player among those four at this point.
Yeah, what do you think about Sergio? And even though what's interesting is Sergio has not registered a top 10 in a major since winning the Masters in 2017. How crazy is that, Jan?
That's pretty amazing. But he's had a lot of personal. He's he dated that girl, then they got married. Now he's had 2 kids. So he's been busy with his family life and trying to catch up because he always felt like he was a little bit behind when he got started. So he's really put his family first. I think that's one of the reasons he went to the LIV.
This is definitely the event, though, that he would want to win more than anything. So
without question,
if he can get off to a good start, then maybe. Okay, and look, we'd all like to see Lee Westwood get some sort of happiness in his life when it comes to so he's got that Colin Montgomery kind of history in a major that he just didn't get it done. But it's unfortunate. I don't know if he's got. Do you think he has at least one more in contention in him, Jan, in a major? No. That's it.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say that because, I mean, he's very happy. He just got married. His wife's really young and caddies for him, and they have a great relationship. So he's got a really good home life, which helps a lot. He was surprised at all of the negativity over the Live Tour, but he did join it. So this is his one chance to, again, show everybody in England that he's made the right decision and he's home. So I'd like to see him do well. He hits the ball left to right pretty severely. So this golf course doesn't suit him.
Yeah, and I always thought he and Poulter would find a way to win an Open Championship, and it just hasn't happened. And he's gotten obviously older, and I don't know whether or not he can do it, but maybe one of these years, if he's trending in the right way and he's playing good heading into an Open Championship, still got a couple years left before it's too late. And then how about first appearance players? Okay. K.H. Lee, Mito Pereira, Seamus Power, JT Poston, Cameron Young, or Sahith Theegala? Jared?
I'm going to go Mito there. And man, a month ago I would have probably considered betting Cam Young, but since he shot 80 at the Memorial in that last round, he hasn't bounced back from that yet.
Something's going on.
Yeah. And Mito hasn't been great either, but he hasn't been quite as bad as Cam Young. So for me, it'd be Mito. Then Seamus Power would be a close second. Though I kind of like him this week, not to win, but I think he could top 20, maybe even top 10.
Dan,
I'd probably do Seamus.
Yeah, Seamus 27th, 12th, and 9th in majors this year. So 3 top 30s in majors. Okay, then, and the last one.
Was that JT Poston just won a couple weeks ago? So.
Yep. Yeah.
I was going to ask you about his game because we didn't talk about that win at the what was it, Travelers? Is he just?
No, it was
John Deere. John Deere. He came second at Travelers, and then he won John Deere.
Jan, do you think Poston is just one of those guys, or does he have the ability to be a regular top 50 player?
Oh yeah, he's definitely got the ability to be a top 50. He'd be a top 10 this week. He couldn't win.
And then the last group I want to ask you about, and I'm not saying these guys are going to win, but if you had maybe in fantasy, because this would be a nice group. Padraig Harrington, Ernie Els, Phil Mickelson, Henrik Stenson, Stuart Sink, and Zach Johnson.
Oh wow,
Jared.
I guess Stuart Sink. I can't say I've been keeping up on what most of these guys have been doing.
That's not good news for those guys then.
No, it's not.
Didn't Stenson win something like a month ago?
Patrick won the men's senior open.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, Patrick won.
I would go Stuart Sink there. He's actually had some decent. He was 24th last week at the Scottish. So.
Yeah, I would think you'd have to go with him because everybody on that list is all, pretty much full. Henrik Stenson's 49, so he's getting ready for the Champions Tour. Zach Johnson's in his mid-40s or late 40s, and so the others are already playing on the Champions Tour, whereas, even though Patrick just won, and he won convincingly, I would still think you'd have to do a regular PGA guy like Stuart Sink.
By the way, Ernie Els won the Open Championship in 2002. He won the 2012 Open Championship. So can he do it again in 2022? So he's won it he won it 10 years ago and 20 years ago. So I think it's too late for Ernie Els. But Phil did it at what, 51 last year? So anything is possible. All right. I think I got you guys back. That's okay.
We lost
my
line went dead there for a second.
Yep. Froze.
Okay. So
did you see what his odds are?
Jan, he's 150 to 1.
Who's that?
I'd like to put some money on him.
Who's that?
Ji Young Kim.
Ji Young Kim or Tom Kim, I think is what he goes by.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about the
Joo-Hyun Kim. He finished third last week at the Scottish.
Yeah, he's only 20 years old.
Yes.
He only just turned 20.
Yes.
That's pretty impressive.
I got a buck on him at 150 to 1.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, he was 23rd at the U.S. Open.
Why not? I mean, that's awesome.
I would.
He's playing great golf. He hasn't made that hello, here I am moment yet because not a lot of people watch the Scottish Open time zone America deal. So maybe it's this week.
Yeah, I've been watching his golf. I like his golf swing. I think he's and he's got a really positive attitude, which is good because he's confident, and that's what you got to be when you're 20.
And so no Shane Lowry. Nobody seems to be on Shane Lowry this week.
I like him, just 22 to 1. Don't love that number.
Okay.
I agree.
And then just looking through to see if there's anyone else. I know I put a couple of bucks on some of these players. I mentioned.
Where do you go to bet on him? They won't let you bet in Florida, will they?
Yes, you could just go online, Jan. You mean what do you want to walk in somewhere and place a bet?
Yeah, I want to be like in Australia where you can do it on at the 7-Eleven.
Yeah, you can't do that yet.
That must be nice.
Especially Florida. Yeah, they're not ready for that yet.
I could probably go down to Hard Rock and do it.
Yeah, I don't know if they have sports wagering there.
They probably would. They have everything.
Anybody else? I mean, Fox is someone I've said I've been interested in how good his game has been. Yeah. We haven't talked about DeChambeau for a good reason, even though he's 130 to 1.
I would put money on him because I'm really favoring the live players, but I tell you what, they've given him the worst tee time on purpose. They gave him like
he's with
playing with John Daly.
He's playing with John Daly.
Yeah, I mean Bryson. I mean they did everything they could to punish him every inch of the way.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, if he's healthy, he's worth a few bucks at 130 to 1.
I think he's coming back now. I don't like the changes he made. Like I said, we talked about before. I didn't like the changes he's made in his golf swing. I want him to go back to the other one because trying to hit it that extra 10 yards, which big deal. He actually took away some of his really good qualities. I mean, I still have his pictures on my refrigerator right now because I'm hoping he's going to go back to that golf swing.
And what's up with Paul Casey? He's been injured, Jared?
Yeah, Paul's had a bad neck.
Is he playing?
He just signed with. I had a drink with his caddy, who lives here in Tampa before he left, and he kind of indicated that he was getting ready to leave and go to the Live Tour. So I knew that was going to happen, and he took a few weeks off to see if he could get healthy and get his family to be happy with him leaving and all of that. So he's had some time to work on his game. I think he could be a sleeper.
Well, you see,
I don't know what his odds are.
You could get his caddy on for an interview.
Yeah.
You can have some drinks. Buy
the beer.
Yeah. And also, Gooch is 100 to 1. We didn't really talk much about Gooch.
He's on my list.
Okay.
I got all high ones. I took, like I said, I took every live player.
Paul,
it's a nice way of doing it.
Paul Casey is 180 to 1 on DraftKings.
Yeah, but the only thing is that he only has 2 top 10s in 18 British Opens. How crazy is that? That you would not expect.
That is crazy.
Yeah. You would have thought that would be a venue that would be perfect for him. Look, Bazun, who played well again last time out, so he's still on a nice run. He's at 80 to 1. And
some of the longer shots that just popped in the numbers I looked at, and I don't really believe any of these guys can win, but maybe for fantasy or like top 10 bets. Harold Varner pops up for me. Chris Kirk pops up high for me. He's 300 to 1. Again, I don't think he can win, but Keegan Bradley is 140 to 1. He pops up for me. And then Gooch actually at 125 to 1 comes in pretty high for me.
We mentioned Jordan Smith last week, and he played well last week. So that's nice to see. He's 150 to 1. Billy Horschel's 100 to 1. Can you believe Billy Horschel has one career major top 10?
Wow.
And it happened in his second appearance back in 2013.
Oof. He has 5 missed cuts and 7 open appearances. He did come in 30th at St. Andrews in 2015.
Yeah, but he's playing well now.
Right.
And Cameron Tringali had a good start last week. but there's no way Cameron Tringali, like Kurt Kitayama, there's like no way these guys are gonna. And they came close, but it's like, come on, you're gonna first win is gonna be a Scottish Open.
No, they can't handle the pressure.
Yeah. All right, so that'll do it. The Barracuda, right? That's also taking place.
Yeah.
And Maverick McNeely is the odds-on favorite to win that event. So we'll next week be talking. What are we talking next week? What's coming up? That's a 3M Open, I believe.
I'm going with Michael Thompson and Hagee and Rafa for next week.
I can't. What was that?
I'm going with Michael Thompson and Rafa and Hoagie.
Oh, at the Barracuda.
Yeah.
Hoagie's at the Barracuda?
Yeah.
Hagee.
Oh, Hagee.
Hagee.
Yes, Hagee, actually, I had noticed he had a good resume at that golf course. That's a good pick. So there you go. Jan's giving you their picks for the Barracuda. So hopefully one of those will come through for you. Next week, the 3M Open, I who knows what kind of field that's going to be following an Open Championship, but you never know because some of them have to play. So maybe we'll get a better field than what we've seen the last couple of weeks. Well,
the PGA took 2 charter planes over with everybody, and they're bringing them back. So they'll take them. One will go to 3M and one will go somewhere else, and they have to get their own way from there. So I think they were kind of making them go to the 3M.
All right, and Jared, fantasy football is starting to. We're getting there. It's almost August. You and I are going to talk fantasy football when we get to August. But what are you guys talking about right now?
I think the first training camp's open in like 2 weeks.
Yes.
So we're getting real close. We keep rolling out our division preview podcast. So those are firing up. We did, what did we do today? The NFC South. So we looked at those 4 teams. Then we got a bunch of articles hitting the website, strategy articles, player targets, all that good stuff.
Awesome. And Jan, what are you up to? Are you going to wait next week? Is that an LPGA major?
It was this women's senior major, but I pulled out because I'm not hitting it well enough. I played yesterday, and every one of my wedges was not inside 10 feet, and so I'm not playing well enough yet.
Jan, I love
gotta hit those wedges, please. Pardon?
I like when I hit a wedge inside 30 feet. So
no, I was because I played in an event yesterday. I mean, we won it, but I was a team event. But usually, when if my wedge game is off like that, I can't play. I can't compete.
By the way, next week is the Evian. That's the LPGA major in France.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it used to be in Switzerland. It's now in France.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down. So we'll talk about a little bit about that next week. We'll get Jan's perspective, a couple of picks, and then we'll wrap up the Open Championship. Hopefully, it'll be a memorable one. Jared, Jan, appreciate your time as always. Enjoy the golf this week, and we'll talk to you again on Tuesday.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, good luck, guys.